Thank you, David Trolley. Thank you. And thank you, Patricia Wright, for platforming today. It's just wonderful to have you here. Thank you. And David Morse for the announcements. And Audrey, it's always so good to have you do the affirmations. Thank you for being here. And David Trolley, you're as fabulous as always. Fabulous, David Trolley. Fabulous. And yes, absolutely. And you know who else is fabulous? The next gentleman that's going to be our guest speaker for today, our board president, John Duffy. Now, I have to tell you, I didn't know what to think 2 years ago when Patricia Wright said, I'm not going to be running for the board again. I'm taking off in an RV and traveling all over the world. And she did. And what a transition it was from fast-paced Patricia Wright to John Duffy as your board chair. But we slowed down into it, and I have to tell you what a wonderful 2 years it's been for me as a minister to have this man as our board president. He's talk about somebody that's been willing to change and to adapt to new ideas. It's taken me by surprise, really, because we've had to change a whole lot over the last 2.5 years. And it's through the leadership of the board and through John's leadership and the assistance of all you that we've made the progress that we've made and are where we're at right now. If you look around, I think the love of John Duffy is one of the things that's carried us and kept us together throughout this pandemic, throughout the change from being an in-person ministry to a virtual ministry. And I personally want to thank him right now for his service and for his time serving this church. It's just, thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. He deserves all of that applause. And I'm glad he put his hat back on. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Casey at the bat, our board president, John Duffy. Thank you, John.
Well, Casey at the Bat by Ernest Lawrence Thayer. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, both Reverend Rich and Ann, for that marvelous introduction. I hardly know who they're talking about, as a matter of fact. But before we get started, let me take off my baseball cap and put on my treasurer's hat. Ann mentioned that we sent out a letter, we being the board sent out a letter about our tithing, but that letter has also included our pledge cards for next year's budget planning process. And we invite those of you who receive that or soon will receive those pledge cards to prayerfully consider how you may best serve our Unity Center of Davis while remaining conscious of your very own personal financial well-being. And we've included a stamped addressed envelope for your convenience. Okay, now we can go back to baseball. Let's take a moment, and even though Reverend Rich took us through this, let's take a moment to take a breath in, hold it briefly, let it out. Maybe you didn't need that, but I sure did. So since Reverend Rich joined us now nearly 3 years ago, he has extended to the board president an opportunity to bless our UCOD family with a Sunday message. Last year, I took us on a trip down my memory lane to talk about going back to basics. This year, it seemed to me, he was a little antsy about my delivering a short description and a title for my talk. And when I awoke about 2:27 a.m. on Friday, October 27th, with a clear image of Casey at the bat rolling around inside my head, I knew I'd best follow that inner guidance and use that for my talk title. And from the announcements we've seen for today's message, You may be thinking I'll be talking all about everything baseball. And with the World Series in progress, that could be a timely topic. Oh, I had truly hoped that Philadelphia would tie the series yesterday so we could look forward to a Game 7. Well, let's get baseball out of the way so I can focus on time. How many of you, by show of hands, know where to find the first reference to baseball in the Bible? I see one hand. Let me check the other screen. I don't see any hands there. I'm surprised. Well, let me just blurt it out. That's right. It's in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the big inning, well, go ahead, have a good groan. Oops. You know, one of the downsides of having everyone muted on Zoom, I can't hear those groans. I really don't know how much you appreciated that. So I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Mr. Thayer's poem, which was written in the late 1880s. So let me just give a brief recap. It's the bottom of the ninth inning, and the Mudville baseball team is down by a score of 4-2 with 2 outs. Flynn and Blake are next up, and they're not known for their prowess at the bat. And Casey, the hometown hero, was third up. Not much of a chance he would get to the bat. And yet, Flynn got a hit. And Blake, why, he too tore the cover off the ball, leaving runners at second and third, with Casey now at the plate. Oh my. The crowd roared with anticipation. Casey stood his ground and passed the first 2 pitches. Called strikes by the nearly blind umpire, or so the crowd thought. Now, this is where we start to think about time. There is time before the pitch and time after that pitch. And then there is Fiji time. So let's hear it straight from Thayer's hand. And now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go. And now the air is shattered by the force of Casey's blow. Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out. Is that a lesson for not allowing your joy to depend on the outcome of others' actions? Well, it's clear that all of us are in touch with one of the commonly accepted truisms about time, as we all have set our clocks back an hour to revert to standard time, thereby saving an hour. I was going to say that we should keep watch on to see who shows up between 10:30 and 11 because they forgot to reset their clocks. But my wife reminded me this morning that it's the other way around. They would have been here an hour earlier if they hadn't set their clocks back. So I think we'll just choose to be grateful that we're all here now. So I've spent a good bit of my time over the last several years, that's even before COVID-19, pondering the nature of time and my relationship to it. To help prepare for today, I went back to basics for a dictionary definition of time. Please bear with me for, as they say on TV news, some of these images may be disturbing or confusing. In the dictionary that I used, there are a full 34 examples of subclasses of time. A full 34 examples. I'll start with the very first one. Time is a non-spatial continuum in which events occur in apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present to the future. So let's look a little closer at some of those words. Spatial, relating to, occupying, or having the character of space. So non-spatial must mean not relating or occupying space. Time doesn't exist in space. Continuum, a coherent whole, characterized as a collection, a sequence, or a progression of values or elements varying by minute degrees. Apparently irreversible. Let's just use our imagination on that. And from the past through the present and to the future. Well, at least I think that part is quite clear. In addition to the main dictionary definition, there are another 50 examples ranging from time and a half to time zone about how time impacts our lives. Do you now feel as confused as I do about the nature of time? Well, please join me as we explore some of what my mental wanderings about time have included. Here's a few questions. Can we save time? Can we stop time? Can we put time in a bottle? No offense, Jim Croce. Can we long for yesterday? Thank you, Beatles. Can we bank time? Can we keep time? Can we lose time? Where'd that time go? Can we reverse time? Can we set time? We know that I can because I just set the time on that clock. Will we have a good time then? That's Harry Chapin, Cats in the Cradle. And finally, time is money? Well, only if you get a $350 ticket for going 100 miles an hour to save time. Whew. Well, after considering these and other quixotic matters of time for several years, I concluded there was really only one thing we can do with time. Are you ready for the big reveal? Here it is. We can spend time. Let me say it again. We can spend time. That's it. I was so content, some might even say smug, in my great discovery. And I went on to clarify that we can spend time wisely or foolishly. The choice is ours to make. In the scant weeks since I chose my subject and then my title, I have experienced a host of time-related events, which have now upended, revised, rewritten, and personalized my relationship to time, and in the process has wiped away my smugness and instilled a new sense of discomfort, both of which I view as positive. Oh, and speaking of positive, I found a key element in my new awareness of time in a positive COVID-19 test result. Many of you have asked me at one time or another, "How are you today, John?" And have heard me reply, "Today, I choose to be blessed and grateful." And that was the way it was until it wasn't. Thursday, October 27th, I had yet another home COVID-19 positive test result. Some 10 days after my initial result, as we heard earlier, as a result of a journey to Unity Village. And all my positivity went down the drain and out to sea. Whew. During the course of that day, that October 27th, I heard a number of news stories that helped me regain some perspective on time. It had been nearly a month since Hurricane Ian had lashed Florida's southwest coast, and only minimal progress had been made on their return to normal. I also got more information about COVID-19 testing results. Did you know that the laboratory test program is so sensitive that it can detect the former presence of the virus for up to 90 days after an initial positive test? 90 days. Thank you. And my Kaiser doctor wrote back to me, "For some people, the home antigen test continues to remain positive after 10 days, and it is not useful to keep testing." Well, I wish I'd known that then. You are considered not contagious after 10 days, as long as you are improving. Well, while I would not choose to feel better about myself because others are dealing with even greater challenges, I am okay with the awareness that what I'm going through is not really a big deal in the grand scheme of life. Are there any others of you who read the obituaries in the daily paper, or is it just me? I've been doing this for many years, and yes, I do take note of birth dates and make comparisons to my own beginnings. And I have also made other more personal lifespan comparisons. For example, with all the male relatives that I know of on both the Duffy and the Rocky sides of my family. My brother Jim, my dad Eddie, my uncles Al, Eddie, and John, grandfathers Michael and Felix, cousins Stanley and Tommy, 9 guys in all. And at age 82, I have now lived longer than any of them had the privilege to last. The women in our family seem to have fared much better. And then there are a few incidents that leave me breathless as I consider how close I have come to leaving this earthly plane, as they say, at too young of an age. One in particular stands out for me, and I'd like to share that with you now. It was early October 1973, and several of us fish and game divers and friends had gotten together for a night dive for lobster on the Palos Verdes Peninsula along the Los Angeles area coastline. We had a great time. We caught a few lobster. Afterwards, we kicked back to share a few drinks and tell some sea stories. Good time. The next day at work, I was a little tired from all that action and decided to leave work about an hour early. As I had been doing for the previous 7 years, I had ridden my Honda Superhawk 305 motorcycle. And as I left work, I came to the only stoplight before I would get on the freeway to head home. The cross street had 3 lanes in each direction. going from downtown Long Beach on my right to the Terminal Island Naval Station on my left. When the light turned green for me, I paused a few extra seconds, as it was not unusual to have a driver from the left, no doubt trying to save time, run their red light. Seeing all traffic stopped, I casually started across, never even looking to my right, which is why I was totally 100% relaxed. As a driver coming from the right, not even slowing down, smacked into the right side of the bike. The driver didn't bother to stop. And by the grace of God, if I had been literally a fraction of a second slower, I would either been dead in the road or had a severely fractured pelvis, hip, and leg. Instead, the right front fender of the offending car hit me, as the doctor said later that evening, while looking at my x-ray and bruise on my right buttock. That is the only spot in the human body where one can take a blow of that much force and not break a bone. Whew, I skated. Notwithstanding that and other much less traumatic life events, it's really not until recently that I have shifted from an intellectual awareness of time to a very personal awareness that I do indeed have a best if used by date or a very real finish for this lifetime. And that awareness comes with some very positive benefits and has added a subcategory on how to spend time. Last Sunday, a week ago today, I got a text from a very good friend inviting me to meet them for breakfast or lunch the next day, noting that it was a spur of the moment thing, prodded by the fact that they were scheduled for some surgery that Wednesday. In another example of divine order, it just so happened that I was on tap for a golf tournament at Davis Municipal Course with a tee time that would easily allow me to join my friend for a late lunch. We set a time and place. We got together basically for the first time since the start of the pandemic. And we got each other caught up on what's been going on in our lives. During that experience, I had no sense whatsoever of time passing. And afterward, I was flooded with a sense of having shared time. We shared time. Plus, as a bonus, my friend treated me to the lunch we shared. You can't go wrong with that, huh? The following 2 days of last week, Joy and I traveled to Redwood City for a series of pre-op appointments for her surgery scheduled later this month. What a great way to share time with a loved one. So as I continue to mature, ripen, age, or just plain old, get old, my appreciation for the gifts of time continue to deepen and shine spotlight on why we often refer to time as the present, because it is a gift. And as we close out our time together today, I invite you to examine how you choose to spend your time. And I do thank all of you for choosing to spend time with me today. Oh, one more item. This last Thursday afternoon, I took another home COVID-19 test, and I'm pleased to report that I'm 100% positive that the test was negative. Yay, God. Love to you all. Amen.